how to start this presentation? Well, this presentation started with a problem, right? The problem that I faced when I started teaching at the University of Calgary back in 2021 was that I had a course with 373 students. And one of the components of the course was a group project. And because of the size of the class was not feasible to have just one TA marking this course. And then we had to split the TAs to mark it. And these provided several rounds of calibration between the TAs. The other issue that I had was that marking itself, it's a lot of job. It's a large job. And providing feedback, meaningful feedback, it just add to that, right? It's not just a matter of pointing a question mark on the student's report. But what I felt as an instructor was that when the feedback was poor, when we just deducted marks from the students and the justification was not what the students expected, or they couldn't understand why the marks were deducted, the students would come back and ask for additional information. And then when you have a large class of students, that makes a problem, because how to handle all of these requests, it's also a lot of work, right? The other thing is that, well, some of the TAs, they are really good in providing feedback, but some of the TAs, due to different reasons, English is their second language, whatever, it's more difficult to, although they are good markers, they can understand the marking, but provide feedback, it's not what, it's not up to the task. So with this issue, this project, we want to build a tool and not just a prompt, that it's repeatable, documented workflow, minimal setup for instructors, transparent outputs, not upload submissions to ChatGPT, because this was one main concern. A lot of TAs that I had asked if they could submit the submissions to ChatGPT to get the feedback. What would be the feedback of ChatGPT? And I always said, well, this is not possible, because you have IP, intellectual property concerns, right? Where is this submission going after you upload? And then we had these challenges of doing something that would not upload the submissions of students. And then we developed this tool. This tool work entirely from local files. You can upload PDF files, Word, images. You also need to upload the course rubric. So it's not something that, although we will discuss the rubric later on, it's not something that you can just say, well, provide the feedback for this submission. You need to provide information about what is the submission and how you want to mark, how you want to provide this, the feedback. The tool provide a structured output where it contains the feedback and also a score. And this score is based on how the tool will provide the feedback, which we will discuss later on. Advice, comments, and if there was any error in reading these files. Support different submissions formats. You can submit PDFs, document, Word documents. If you have an exam with students, you can also upload handwritten documents, and the tool will read these handwritten documents as well. And you can also have the D2L folder, export it to a folder, and then the tool will read all these folders, and we will show all the functionalities of the tool. It's an executable file, so it's an app in your computer. You can download it. The only thing that you will need is a ChatGPT API key. So now I'll pass to Mahdi, which has a background in software engineering, to explain the implementation of the tool.
Thank you so much. And I can share my screen or just ask you to go to the next slide?
I can go.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. So my name is Mahdi. Right now, as Dr. Estacio mentioned, I'm civil engineering, a PhD candidate, and hopefully I will finish my PhD this semester. So at the high level, the front end is just a simple GUI or graphical user interface. And at the back end, we do three main things. We extract the content from the file. We will build a prompt file and call the model. Then we parse the response and save it to the Excel or PDF file based on the requirements of the instructor. Can you go to the next? So here you can see the app's graphical user interface or GUI. At the end of the session, I will actually run it on a few examples so you can see it in action in the real time. As you notice, the app includes multiple options. It can handle the handwritten submissions to provide feedback on them. For longer reports, you can choose the section by section analysis, so the app can work on each part of the document separately. We usually detect the sections in a Word or PDF file by differences in the font size or the formatting in the Word or PDF files. Especially for a long document, it can be so helpful. Maybe you tried that before. When you ask a long question from the ChatGPT, maybe the response is not that much great. So it is recommended to somehow split it into a smaller section. So that's the idea of this option. But, and also by default, we don't analyze the figures because it can be costly in terms of the time and the money. But you can turn on that option on the second row. If you do, you can pick the different quality levels. For example, if you choose a higher quality for more detailed figure extraction, or just a lower quality if you just want to have a summarized, a quick summary feedback. It's all about the balancing and the trade-off between the cost and time. You can also add metadata files. I'm going to explain it later. If you have extra instruction or rubrics that are too long to fit into a short prompt file, the app will summarize those metadata files and include them when grading of each student. So everything stays consistent. There is also a D2L folder compatibility mode. If you download the submissions from D2L, it will sort out all the student submissions into just one folder, so you don't have to copy paste them one by one manually. Can we go to the next slide?
Yeah.
So as I explained earlier, here is a quick look at the big picture of how tool works. We have a front-end GUI built with the Python library. There are two main inputs, a prompt file, and we are going to talk about that later, and the folder of the submissions mainly. Before we send anything to the LLM, we do some pre-processing to reduce the cost. For example, instead of sending whole 50 pages of the document and report, we summarize it first. Once we have those condensed versions, we send them to the LLM. We use ChatGPT 4 and GPT-5 mini and 5.2 right now, because compared to the GPT-4, they are cheaper for us because the input tokens are cheaper than the output tokens. And since we are mostly sending larger inputs and getting shorter outputs like an Excel file or a PDF file, this makes it more economical for us. In short, we only send those parts of the information and the files that are more important for us. So for the next slide, as I mentioned, the type document, like a Word file, we extract maybe 6,000, 8,000 characters per section, or for whole document, depends on the option that you select. And then we send those summarized texts with the prompt file to the model. This way, we get the feedback and the output file without sending the huge files directly. For handwritten submissions, the process is all the same, but we first convert the PDF into the image, and then we extract the text from those images. After that, everything works the same way as with the type submission. Then I'm going to explain the metadata. What is it? Metadata is a shared course material like a project description or project readings. For example, if students are asked to provide a summary of some papers, you might have long metadata files. So instead of including all those information in every prompt, which would be too much, the tool has a feature where you can select a folder of the metadata files with a prompt file to explain how you should analyze them. And then, oh, sorry, I forgot to mention something here. Before analyzing the submission, the tool will send those metadata files to the model once, get them summarized into the shorter forms, maybe 2 or 3 shorter files, and then it will use those summarized files with the prompt and with the prompts for each student submission. This way, we save time and the cost, but not resending whole metadata files for each submission. At the end, when you run the tool, it will report the total input and output tokens if you want to have an idea about the total cost of the tool.
Okay, so now we are moving to explain how to use the tool. And the first thing is the challenge that we faced around rubric, right? And to start with this challenge, I will give you a really quick example of a type of essay question. Discuss the importance of physical activity for overall health and well-being. In your response, describe the benefits of being physically active and explain why it's considered an important part of health lifestyle. And you have a 5 levels rubric. One, it's very clear, medium, unclear, and very unclear, right? And I remember that when I was working at the University of Nottingham in the UK, and we had a lecture about how to prepare rubrics. They suggested to use this type of adjectives to come up with of these or these types of level to come up with the rubric, right? It's really common to say, well, really good, but good, medium, and so forth, this Likert type of scale. However, large language models are not that good in assessing subjectiveness. So I prepare one answer for this question. Regular physical activity is important for maintaining good health. It can help people improve their physical condition, manage stress, and reduce the risk of several diseases. Many individuals find that being active also improves their mood and helps them feel more energetic throughout the day. Because of these benefits, physical activity is often recommended as part of a healthy lifestyle. However, staying physically active can be challenging for some people due to busy schedules, lack of motivation, or limited access to facilities. Finding activities that are enjoyable and fit into daily routines may help address these challenges. Even small changes, such as walking more or being active at home, can contribute to overall well-being. For these reasons, physical activity is considered an important factor in promoting long-term health. So I asked ChatGPT to assess, based on my rubric, this submission 100 times. And that's the mark that I got. 28 times it was very clear, 34 assessors was clear, medium was 26, unclear was 10, and very unclear was 2. And then I asked it to summarize the feedback of each one of these markers, right? And most markers cluster around the 3, 4, 5. The text is grammatically correct. Ideas are logically sequenced, and topic is familiar, accessible. A split between 5, 4, and 3 reflects different internal standards. 5, everything makes sense. 4, clear but generic, and 3 is understandable but vague. And a small tail at 2 to 1 reflects markers who expect specificity or examples for clarity, and then interpret clear as analytical clarity, not readability. So this was one of the first challenges we faced when we were developing this prototype with Dr. Sarouche, was that, well, the feedback was all over the place. And then what we did to go around this was to take the course rubric, and for each one, for instance, problem statement, this is for project management, right? Problem statement and goal. Clear defines a relevant, compelling problem and a focus project goal. And then we have the descriptors for each one of them. But for each one, for each criterion, we defined a set of questions that the large language model should answer as yes or no. So for instance, the problem statement and goal states a relevant problem, explicit, project goals is stated, goal is clear, specific, not vague, goals aligns with the problem context. And we did this, and for every item in the rubric, ChatGPT should answer yes or no. And based on these yes or no's, it provides the feedback to the student. And the score is based on how many yes you have. So if you have, for instance, the problem statement and goal, you have 4 yes, you get full mark. So it's a way for you to check the feedback in itself, not the mark of the assignment, well, of the submission, but a way to check if the feedback that it's provided by the large language model is aligned with the count of yes and no's you have in your rubric. This is the key. It's one of the critical parts. Every instructor can tweak the prompt to reflect their student submission to get the feedback. But the thing is, if your prompt or if your question is to some extent subjective, it may create a problem with the response that you get from the large language model. The other thing that I can see some instructors discussing about the rubric is that, well, if I provide all these yes or no's that I will ask to ChatGPT to my students, they will just take these questions, put in a prompt to ChatGPT, and ask them to generate the report and submit it, right? So I got that sometimes being subjective, it's of the interest of the course nowadays, right? But for the feedback being useful, from our experience, you need to have these clear guidelines to the feedback. So Mahdi, I think now you will show some examples that we have done. It's ENGG 684, where students should submit project charters and reports. And we also tested with handwritten midterm questions. The observations, the section by section plus metadata significantly improved alignment with rubric. So because this report was a large report, then when we asked it section by section, the feedback was much better than instead of compiling just as one single submission with 6,000 characters. Fast mode was more for screening. We had to use more advanced and more expensive models to provide better results. So can you go through the handwritten example, Mahdi?
Yeah, for sure. So here is a real handwritten example, just a part of that after transcription. The key point is that the model turns this messy handwriting into the clean structured text. After that, analyzing a step is almost same as for the type submissions. So on the next slide, you can here you can see the prompt we used for a handwritten submission on the right side. And on the left side, you can see an example of the output. The output includes notes on the weakness, clarity, or some suggestions for improvement. In other words, the feedback you get is shaped by the prompt you provided to the model, as Dr. Estacio mentioned. So that's the most important part if you want to use the tool. And on the next slide, Slide, yeah, the next one, 18. Okay, here is the example Dr. Estacio mentioned. Here is another example, a bit more complex, from a project management course that we had last semester. For that phase of the group project, the rubric had 6 items. As you can see here, we turned each criteria into a set of the yes or no sub-questions. For instance, instead of asking for a general interpretation, we somehow asked the model to just, if the objective is clearly stated or if the certain requirements are met or not. So just some yes or no questions. This way, the feedback is more specific and practical because you see exactly which items were missed and how to improve it, as you can see, I think, on the next slide. Here, you can see some examples of the feedback we provided to the students. They receive a score, but that score is just to help you have an idea about the submission. The most important part is the feedback based on the prompts that we had earlier. And so they get a detailed feedback. We highlight the sub items they missed, offer a piece of the praise in the beginning, and then suggest how they can improve. This makes the feedback maybe more clear and actionable. At the end of the session, before finishing the presentation, I'm going to run the tool on the same submissions, but just by using a simple prompt, just a general prompt, to see the difference in the feedback and the outputs. So on the next slide, the last semester, fall semester, near end of the semester, we asked students to complete a short survey about the feedback quality. The project had 3 main segments. The segment 1 was a group work and submission, and segment 2 and 3 were individual work and submissions. Segment 1 feedback was generated with the tool that you can see right now, and segment 2 and feedbacks was provided by 2 TAs. The goal was to compare how students perceived helpfulness and the clarity and accuracy of the feedback for those materials that they had. So on the next slide here, you can see this figure shows the average rating for helpfulness and the clarity or accuracy. Each bar represents 1 segment. So we can compare the segment 1, which is AI feedback, with segment 2 and 3 TA feedbacks. When one average is higher, it means that the students rated that feedback as more helpful and clear. So 1 point, as you can see here, and maybe in the next 2 plots, is that we received, based on that survey results, we received a better rating for the first segment. So from the perspective of the students, it was better, more helpful, and more accurate. The feedback was clear for them. And on the next slide, here we have the box plot that shows not only the average, but also the range of the student responses. A smaller box means the students were more consistent in their rating. So maybe we can say that the smaller box means the feedback was more fair, because, I don't know, maybe it's better to say that it was easier for them to understand, or maybe it was more accurate. And a wider box means their feedbacks were maybe more mixed. So this helps us to understand the consistency too. As you can see here, based on this box plot, the first segment, it received the higher mark. And on the next slide, here, this plot compares the helpfulness and clarity together. In general, when you have a plot like that, when points go up together, it means clear feedback is also seen as more helpful. We use this to see if the clarity and the helpfulness moves in the same direction for students. As you can see, for the segment 1, we don't have that much of the outlier ratings and the feedback, because they are mainly in the same quarter. So on the next slide, here we look at the full distributions of the ratings, not only the mean. Another point that you can see here again is that we don't have that much of the low ratings for the segment one on accuracy as well as the rating, but maybe for second segment or the last one, we have some students, for example, they gave a rating of 0 or 1 to the feedback of the TA. So somehow maybe we can say that it's more fair. And finally, we ask these questions to check whether students actually use the segment 1 feedback for the next submissions that they had. I'm in segment 2 and the last segment. Question 7 asks if they applied the segment 1 feedback to the later phases. Around 87% of the students, they say that they use the feedback to improve and change their submission, for example, for the second segment. And at the right side, based on the question 8, you can see how they found it helpful to improve their submission. And then
I think the next one is you will show the presentation, the slides, right? To show a demo of the tool.
Yeah. Okay, so
you will
I
share
think
now.
I should share my screen right now.
Yeah.
Let me find it. Okay. Can you see my screen right now?
Yes, I can see the
Okay.
presentation. Yeah.
Okay, let me zoom in. Okay, here is just a Excel file that you can click on that to open the app. I don't know if I can zoom in more. I don't know, it's better or not this way. I hope it's visible. So we are going to run the tool based on the submissions, just maybe 4 or 5 of them that we had based on the simple prompt file. Let me show you the prompt file. First, the simple one that I'm going to use it right now. So, the most important part of the prompt file is this part. Earlier, we used some items, a list of the yes or no questions to convert each criteria into maybe 4 yes or no sub questions. But here, we just provided those criteria directly. So based on this prompt file, I'm going to run the tool. The rest of the prompt file is same. And so I'm going to use D12 for the compatibility as we downloaded the file from the D12. So click on this one. As we have long reports, maybe 40 or 50 pages of the reports, the section by section as well. And then you should select the submission folder as well as prompt file.
Can you zoom the file?
I think I cannot zoom in. I don't know how can I, because it's my desktop. Let me see. I don't know. I cannot zoom in directly here.
No, you can. The size of the font of the app is the same.
Yeah, I think it's not helpful this way. And
you need to reduce the resolution of your monitor so we can see it larger.
Okay,
yeah.
But yeah. And then you should select the folder for the results. Maybe let's call it results simple. I chose the prompt file and the folder. So if I click the run, maybe because we have only the 4 submissions, it shouldn't take that much of the time. at the end of running the tool, we should have one Excel file over here.
So the tool also shows the progress, right? Although it's
Yeah,
small, what it's saying is that, well, you need to define where is your submission folder, where is your prompt file, the location of your prompt file, and what is the file, and where you want to save your output file or the feedback, right? Some people already asked if they can download and use the tool. That's the reason why we are presenting this, right? We want to ask people to use the tool. So if you could send if you are interested in using this tool to your course, our goal is to create an API for your course, and then you can test it, and then we will support the instructors during the use of this tool if they have any issues to run this application, right?
yeah. Okay, it's done. Here you can see a report of the total used inputs. And as you mentioned, yeah, I have a 34-inch gaming monitor, so that's why those pixels are too tiny. And then if we open the Excel file, here I can zoom in. Here we have 4 submission, but let's just check the feedback. You know, maybe if I want to zoom in more, maybe it's easier this way. For example, let's check this feedback.
No, there is no specific course can be used to anything.
Here,
You can
yeah.
upload all the submissions into one folder, and then you specify the folder where all the submissions are in. You don't need to upload submission by submission.
Yeah. Or for example, if you download a folder from the D2L directly, because you have a main folder, and for each student you will have another folder, and inside of that there are submissions of each student. So by clicking on that D2L option, you can just easily use based on that formula. Okay, here is just one example of the feedback for this course, same submission. As you can see here, the feedback is too general, and the grade and the score is not maybe that much helpful. And if you provide a feedback like that to the students, maybe compared to the first one that we had with a more detailed prompt, it's less helpful. It's too general and too generic, maybe. Or if I want to show you another one, here we have the feedback. I feel that the details in the feedback, if your prompt is too general, they are somehow similar. And it cannot be that much helpful for students. Maybe for some courses or some projects, it's fine. But if your course and project is too specific, it is recommended to just have something like a prompt file engineering. For example, you can ask a TA or other instructor to just run the tool for maybe 1 or 2 submissions to check the feedback. If you want to add more details into the rubric, or if you want to increase, I don't know, for example, details or how much harsh you want to be based on the feedbacks. So you can customize everything in the prompt file. So that was just an example. So maybe we can just get back to the presentation, or if there is any question.
Yeah, so as next steps for these two, let me share my
Okay, let me stop
screen.
sharing.
As the next steps for these two, we are expecting to, after April, come up with the app assessing the quality of the prompt of the rubric that you are inputting into this into this app. So to provide the feedback saying, well, this is too generic, it can create poor feedback and consequently not being helpful to the students. The large language models still can occasionally misscore edge cases. If it's as more specific you are, better is the feedback. But if you still have subjective, it can potentially misscore. And of course, it needs human spot checking to make sure that, well, the mark that you are providing is to some extent aligned with the feedback that it's being provided by the tool, right? So for instance, if you are giving the students a full mark, you need to double check that the tool is not providing areas for the students to improve their submission and vice versa. Yeah, and then the possible extensions, we already discussed what it will be. It's calibration tools, compares large language model versus structure scores, and the prompt file engineering to provide a feedback on how your rubric will be assessed by the tool. So that's the tool. Our goal is to make this available for instructors participating um, in this presentation today, so they could test with their course and let us know what are the issues that they are facing when using the tool, and then we can improve it to in the future make it available across the university. About the cost, maybe you are asking how much it costs to use the tool, right? I would say that $10, it's you can access a lot of reports depending on the size of your report. But for the project management course, we had this term around 20 submissions, I believe. And
28, I think, and maybe 40 pages on average, something like that.
yeah, and then it was around $10 that
Less, I think even less than $5.
less than $5 that we spent to provide the feedback, a structured feedback section by section to the students. And we would like to thank you, the Taylor Institute. And now, if you have questions about the tool or implementation or how to use it, we will be happy to answer your questions.